My name is Sawako Nakayasu, and I am a poet and translator and performance artist. Well, in terms of writing, it kind of happens in some gradual way in the course of school and learning to write, and then having creative opportunities to write. So I don't have a set moment when I became a poet, but I knew that I was interested in writing in slightly less conventional ways. So I tried doing journalism in high school, but I ended up being the columnist because I could write in more playful ways there. And then in college, I started taking some writing classes, and at that point I was still open to various genres, but because what I was writing was so hard to classify and I was writing into these spaces that were between genres, by default I became a poet because poetry has the most capacity for form, and I've kind of continued since then. In my own writing, it feels in some ways that that aspects relating to race are relatively new. Even though they were always there, they're a little bit more explicit, and they're growing more explicit over time. And so I think that it's an ongoing process of the degree to which I'm working with and through metaphor and analogous circumstances and aspects of sort of parallel forms of oppression that can be interpreted racially or interpreted via thinking about feminism, for example. And so in a way, my newest book, Some Girls Walk Into the Country They Are From, is writing from the space that's between feminism and a sort of racialized outlook towards identifying aspects and moments and conversations and perspectives that are thinking about race, but also talking about it through a combination of the language of feminism that I've inherited over the years of writing that I've engaged in. It's definitely a challenging time right now on so many fronts, in so many aspects of our lived life, our artistic lives, our community. And one of the things I really think about is working from the interstices of the established categories. And I hope and think that part of the work is to break down the sort of powerful nodes of genre or category or classification in everything that I'm seeing. So especially in terms of literature and in terms of literary translation, one thing I've become very active in is thinking about a space that's working in between literary translation and just straight up writing my original poetry. And what that allows for is kind of a different sense of considering the relationship between authors and translators and the object itself and the authorship or ownership or even the commodity aspect of a work of literature. And I think that there are interesting conversations that can come out of this process of breaking down some of the assumptions we have about translation and about writing and about what we aspire for these objects to, what kind of lives we want our artistic products to live in the world. And I think part of that intention is that literature and poetry and artistic activity gives us a space to practice and rehearse kind of aspects of the life we want to live in. And somehow, if we get in the habit of just breaking down things that are assumed and normal and conventional, it just makes it easy to think in those modes about everything else. And I'm hopeful that that we can kind of bring ourselves to a place where the training of the imagination is the training that we need to envision and work out a path out of the difficulties. I feel like there have been so many surprises. I would say that one surprising thing that happened for me is that around the time that I had my second child, I had some weird kind of epiphany and decided I wanted to be a filmmaker. And I made some weird attempt. I won't go into details. I made a weird attempt to try to become a filmmaker and didn't really succeed. It didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything all that great. But I loved it. And I loved the process of it. I loved the collaboration of it. I loved working with people on a film. And it was interesting because it was something that pulled from different aspects of my art experience so far in terms of writing and performing and movement and editing too. So I loved it. It was a beautiful experience while it lasted. It's not really part of my life at all right now. It's like a strange experience that I feel has marked me in invisible ways and will sort of live on as this cherished memory, even though it's not part of my active experience right now. There are a lot of things I hope for the world. One is that I hope we can move culture closer to the state where the making of art is not narrowly assigned to the people who are deemed to be the professionals or the best, or like there's a sense that some people are artists and some people aren't. But I feel like there's great value in reorganizing that worldview of what art is in our lives. And we don't have to be divided into producers and consumers, that we can all be all of those things if we address certain aspects of the way that we have encouraged art to be in the world and have envisioned it or inherited a lot of practices around it. And I think in a way, like studying art in other cultures helps us get there. Studying art over history can help us get there. But I do feel like we can do a lot better in making art have a different role in daily life. And that in itself might be something to look forward to, or I'm not sure if I can look forward to because I don't know if it's happening, but that's where I'm moving towards, and that's where I want to move towards in terms of a world where we can all have our individual relationships to art making and to being with art and to using it as a tool for many more purposes than we might already be thinking of it as. I think that if I was on a deserted island and wasn't sure if I was going to survive, I would have a lot of questions about, well, do I have the time to be making or thinking about art, or do I need to be focused on survival? Which is an interesting question to ask right now, actually, because there have been so many times over the last year when it was like, well, I need to survive this particular situation. And when in a survival situation, I'm not reaching for art or using it or making it. I'm drawing on the experiences and reflections and thinking that art has given me over the years. And so hopefully it's somewhere in my body, if not my brain. This one is called In a Plastic Bag of Jello with 9 Other Girls. Once the rods in my eyes adjust to the gradations of green, I regret it. Things were easier when I couldn't see. Those choices are no longer available. I inhale Jello, trusting I'll get better at this, assuming the other 9 girls have been here longer and they too struggled at first. I interrupt the writhing movements of girl J, who looks like she's trying to appear to be having a good time. I ask, to no one in particular, if this Jello is safe to eat. No one answers. The Jello is more muscular than I recall. Have my own muscles atrophied so much as to create this perception, or is it the fault of this minimal gravity state of being suspended in Jello, or were they having a drought? No one answers. Did I ever manage to ask? I see a sequence of cubes that might function as a staircase leading me up and out of this place. But it's not that I wanted to leave. If only I could find girl D, we could sell this thing, all of us contained, as a work of art and make a Jello ton of money. Or if I could find girl H and get a hold of a camera and document ourselves releasing emotions into gelatinous sugar, then smuggle the footage out of the bag, the rescue crew would know what to bring when they decide to come for us. I take a deep Jello breath and start to shout, "Has anybody seen?" But then I remember that I'm hoping to avoid girl E, who is likely to blame this whole situation on me. Although the exact hue cannot be ascertained until they pull us one by one out of the green Jello, I do suspect that my skin is turning green. Some girls are darker, some lighter. Their faces, their feet, all of their skin is changing color, and I vaguely hope that I might come out of this a little sweeter. Meal preparation or science project, I bet we are not even going to make the evening news. Girl in her dreamings and girl in her hair. The mistake is in both belief and memory. At that, girl H lies down flat. She's like that. On the bed, she sinks in. In the street, she gets run over. Over a body of water. Her hair spreads, largest and smallest as a convergent point burned by the unbearable light. Her dreamings do not fracture. They leach slowly into the water, the street, the sheets. Even more slowly, they are welcomed or rejected based on their color. When she catches on to what is happening, she takes to hiding her dreamings in her hair. Her hair goes long, longer, all the better to hide more and more believings. Bright sun in the head of the girls. これはさっきあったし、Bright sun in the head of the girls というやつのとっても適当ないい加減な翻訳です。少々起こしてごらん。あはは。The preceding lines explain the fact that this, what you are hearing, is a totally irresponsible and mediocre translation of the poem from earlier called Bright Sun in the Head of the Girls. And then at the end of the line, I said sumi in Japanese, which caused a giggle. It is only after the mediocre translator gives up on translating that anything of value ever happens. まあ、とにかくカクカクしかしそれだけではなく、明るい、カラカラに乾燥した牛の糞. That was the bright dried cow shit, 牛の糞, right? And then the bright hidden stones is the 明るい、架空しきった綺麗な石ころころころ、心の中には貴重な粘土の笛、口笛、頑張って吹いてごらん. That was the bright precious clay whistles. Did you blow it or did you blow it? でもやはり翻訳はここまでとします。10時54分も夜遅いし、あなたの野暮ったさに疲れたし、実は今日結構辛かったし。When girl F finally gets to sleep with girl H, the bright wounds hammered into gossamer threads wrapped around the heart of girl H reach through to the bright lines leaving tracks on the marrow of girl F. I'm actually just reading the original lines in English now, the mediocre translator having given up already, only halfway into the poem. Worse, they are dropping their shit, that's the word fun, which is also homonymous with the counter for minutes. So they stuck that in there after the 10:54. They said 10時54分, a stupid pun that indicates how they feel about being asked to play the role of the shitty translator at this late hour. See how easy it is to shit in a poem of mediocre translation. ここで線と糸が転がり駆け落ち合いながらお互いにキラキラと輝き出して、そもそもその愛情そのものが熱を溜めて小さな可愛い太陽になって、その太陽は鳥の巣のような頭の家にあるはずなのか、実際問題そんなことをすると危険で見つかってしまうので、The lines and 英語の文章の threads fall into each other and encourage mutual sparkling until their love 中に heats up into a tiny little sun.They are not up in the head as advertised, but that is how they protect themselves, 隠れてみよう, from being discovered and potentially harmed.